the Youth at the Center report. It's another CYBHI work stream. And when we got connected with them, maybe back in like, I think January, it was just so cool to finally like meet another CYBHI work stream, and especially one that's doing truly phenomenal, amazing work with some CBOs in the behavioral health world, as well as this Youth at the Center report. So I just can't wait for all of you to see this presentation, and I'll hand it off to you, Dana.
Awesome. Well, hello. Thank you for having me. What a cool space. I mean, we're talking about donuts, awesome music. What a good way to start my Friday. It's amazing. Very cool that you guys have created such a beautiful space. So thank you for having me. Again, Dayna Barrios. I'm the Senior Collective Impact Manager here with the Social Changery. And we're going to go ahead and start my presentation real fast. All right. Okay, so I'm here today to talk a little bit about the Youth at the Center Progress Report. Um, Kind of the way I usually present is I usually go in storytelling mode. It's just kind of like my de facto way of presenting. So first we're going to talk about where it started. And it started back at the Youth at the Center report and the creation of the 12 calls to action. So way back when CYBHI was just about to kick off and just started, the Social Changery was charged with doing the Youth at the Center report, in which 21 organizations, over 50 meetings, 600 individual young people, families, community members, we spoke with all of them to kind of see, hey, what does your community need? Because oftentimes what we see, as I'm sure you all are very used to, in government settings, sometimes it can be kind of siloed. As a Native person, as a Native community member, my community knows this all too well, is sometimes, people will make decisions for us and don't really come to community and ask us what we actually need, what we truly need. And so the Social Changery wanted to do something different here and actually go into community and see what the needs are within the communities. So after all those listening sessions, we put together 12 calls to action, which you can see here on the right hand side. So there's basically three different buckets: shift thinking, reimagine services, and transform systems. And these 12 calls to action were really kind of a guide for CYBHI and looking at, okay, how can we tackle some of these issues together and work towards really the transforming systems piece. While I won't spend a lot of time on this because I really want to get into the toolkits we created, we will post, or you guys can all, look at the Youth at the Center report. The CYBHI website has it posted. A quick Google can get you to the original report. But from this, we wanted to look at what progress has been made, right? Now that CYBHI is transitioning, we really wanted to look at what was the work that was done. How is community feeling about the work that has been done? CYBHI has lots of evaluation teams like Mathematica, and they're fantastic partners of ours as well. But we wanted to do more of a analysis on how community feels about the progress made at the Youth at the Center from the Youth at the Center report. And so this is really kind of where we came to conclusion is, a lot of the work streams did fantastic work. So wellness coaches, really making sure that community voices were incorporated in that process. And really, and all the initiatives in general, right? So I think community really felt that all of the various campaigns that came out of CYBHI, right? Like Live Beyond, Take Space to Pause, all of those statewide campaigns, community really felt those campaigns. Bright Life Kids, for example, is another one. Saluna is another one. Those really had direct impacts on individuals at the community level, which really helped in reducing stigma and really having more culturally responsive outreach through community-based partnerships. We also saw a great investment in prevention, early intervention, peer supports, workforce development, and community-centered services. And what was really great for me personally is I love to see the recognition of trauma-informed practices like traditional healing methods and lived experiences as essential components of care. Those were some of the really big highlighted areas where community really felt that there was progress being made through the CYBHI efforts. But there's also a lot of opportunities for growth, right? A lot of community was like, this is really great, but we want to make sure that this funding is sustained, especially for community-led programs and cultural healing practices, because that is the core of community, is really looking at the community knows their people best, and how to serve their people best, and investing in them is investing in people and communities. So also, a lot of we need to continue to increase access for our rural, disconnected, and historically marginalized communities. It was stated that, all of these apps are really cool, but face-to-face human interaction is still super necessary. And so, how do we continue bringing services to the more rural, disconnected, and marginalized communities throughout California? And then again, really kind of promoting that more co-design and peer leadership is needed, especially moving into BHSA, right? So really making sure that community are co-designers. Sometimes community feels that they're a box that's checked, right? Like, oh, we talked to community, which was like one or two focus groups, but really moving beyond just having an informed, a community informed approach to a co-design peer-led and shared decision-making process. That's really what community is called for. And then addressing systemic inequalities, building trust, creating behavioral health system that is responsive, accessible, and community driven. And we recognize that addressing systemic inequalities is something that is going to be a long process, right? But we need to make sure that we're consistently addressing all those inequities within our communities, whether it's CYBHI, BHSA, or future initiatives as well, keeping those at the forefront of our minds while planning some of these initiatives is extremely important. But again, the report is about 40-50 pages, so it's like goes way in depth, and the whole point was really bringing community voice in. And so we talked to CBOs from across the state. I also lead the Children, Youth, and Family Network, which is comprised of 21 nonprofits throughout California. And they really helped us inform this report and the two toolkits that you'll see. So you'll see quotes in there from community on how they feel the various work streams did on CYBHI, where we need to continue work. For me, it was really eye-opening to see kind of, okay, we did a lot of great things under CYBHI, but there's always work left to be done. And so hopefully we can pick that up with BHSA. And so what's next, right? So when we wrote this report, typical social change, we're like, okay, here's the report, but how do we actually create tools for people to use? Oftentimes I feel like when we publish these large reports, they kind of get lost in the shuffle, and it's not usually something that's tangible for people to use and utilize and put into their work and even everyday lives. So we created a couple toolkits. We created the behavioral health toolkit and a community engagement toolkit. So that's where I'm going to spend a majority of my time, is really kind of going over these toolkits, because I feel that more people can actually utilize these in their day-to-day work life. So the first one is guiding practices for meaningful community engagement. So this toolkit is really for government program managers, policymakers, service providers to move beyond traditional engagement and towards genuine partnership. And I think that's what we're really trying to push for, right? Is how do we build healing-centered systems through authentic community partnership? And again, not just checking a box, not just doing one or two focus groups, but how do we ensure that we're engaging communities in a respectful, mindful way that's about building relationships, not checking a box? And so some of the key elements here you can see on the left side. So why meaningful engagement matters. So talking about the importance of bringing community in, listening to community voice, and actually hearing them. And how to kind of do that, making sure you close the feedback loop. And so we have lots of tools and really checklists on how you can really make sure that your community engagement is super respectful and meaningful. And then part two goes from how do we go from consultation to partnership? Again, I've been around the block a few times, and one of the things I see a lot is that people will reach out to community, ask for their input, and then community never hears anything again. And so that's not, it's more of a transactional relationship rather than an actual partnership. So we go over the spectrum of engagement. And so people can kind of see, hey, this is where my organization or even my school is, and how can we kind of move across that spectrum from a consultation model to more of a partnership model. Part three looks at building trust with communities that have been harmed. Um, I'll use my community as example. There's a section in there that's best practices when working with Native communities, and understanding that historical issues that we still face today as a community, and ways that we can have meaningful and trusting relationships with the various communities here in California. We talk about children that are in the system, how to engage youth at that level as well, LGBTQIA plus communities, best practices for engaging with those communities as well. So we really tried to kind of highlight some of that and give examples of some of the best practices that we've experienced and we've seen when working with various communities. Youth engagement, leadership, and also, again, like I said, a checklist for community engagement. So these are literally like quick reference tools that you can pull out of the toolkit, have it at one of your meetings, and just kind of, sit back and kind of reflect on what are your current models for community engagement. Then we asked the Children, Youth, and Family Network. These are organizations such as ACLU, California After School Network, First Fives across California, Boys and Girls Club, and then smaller local organizations as well. We asked them, hey, you guys have been around the block for a minute. How do you feel about community engagement? What are some of like the ways that you want to be approached? And what are some of the things that we shouldn't do, right? And so these core values for community-centered work actually come from community itself and all the organizations within the CYF network. So it's about equity and inclusion, trust and transparency, respect for lived experience, shared power and collaboration, cultural humility and responsiveness, healing and accountability, continuous learning and adaptation, and sustainability and long-term relationships. So these are kind of like the cornerstone, I would say, for the entire toolkit. Is it's really revolving around the core values that community put forth. And in a perfect world, this is how they feel that community engagement should occur. And so our other toolkit is a toolkit for community members advocating for youth behavioral health in California. And so I really, really love this toolkit because I was one of those kids that I was an advocate ever since I can remember. I saw things around me that I wanted to change and I wanted to make a difference. But to be honest with you, I didn't really know how. I didn't have anybody teach me about, going to local city council meetings or going to state meetings, that I even could do that, right? That I even could be involved in some of these community engagement processes. I had no idea. And turns out it's super complicated. So we basically created a guide that can help you or help community members, whether you're a youth, a parent, or a supportive adult, on how you can really advocate for youth behavioral health in California, because you don't have to have credentials. You don't have to be an expert in policy. Your lived experience is expertise, and it's really important that people at all levels hear about your experiences, hear about your community's needs, and so this toolkit kind of gives you a play-by-play on how to do that. So the toolkit highlights, it's build and share your advocacy story. For me, this is one of the great pieces of this toolkit. It takes you step by step on how to build your story, how to make you feel, or how to create it in a way where you're comfortable telling it, and being safe while doing so, right? And having some grounding techniques, because some of these meetings, it can be overwhelming. And so making sure that you're taking care of yourself through this entire process. This toolkit is also about understanding behavioral health decision-making processes. What does this look like at the state level? What does this look like at the county level or even the city level? So kind of really outlining the various processes for behavioral health decision-making within California. How to identify opportunities for community engagement. For example, BHSA had, public comment periods. How are we aware of those things? How do we get notifications that, hey, now is the time to make sure that your voice is heard because we have billions of dollars about to come down the pipe. So how do we make sure that community perspectives are involved in that? And it kind of gives you some tips and tricks and learning when the various timelines are for decision-making processes. Um, Also, practical advocacy tools and templates. Again, we wanted to make it to where you can basically tear out pages and really have these tools and templates there for you. How to connect with local organizations and resources as well. So you're not alone in advocating, that you can connect with other advocates in your area and how to really go about doing that. And really how to support meaningful community-driven change while prioritizing wellness to transform these systems. So you can see on the right, this is kind of how the toolkit is outlined. So how preparing you to engage, telling you where exactly you can show up in the behavioral health landscape, giving you a bunch of practical tools such as checklists, sample testimonies, follow-up templates. We even have a little guide on social media advocacy, and finding your entry point. So where maybe, you're a 17-year-old youth and you're like, man, I really want my voice heard. Like, I see my friends going through a lot of things, and I myself have gone through some of these things, and I want people to know about it, and I want people to make changes in our society so this doesn't have to happen like this. But where do you start? Maybe you don't want to go all the way up to the state level and advocate at that level. You want to start out with your local city council meetings. So how to go about doing that, how to find when the city council meetings are, and how to go about saying your story. And we even have send an email after your speech, and how to follow up with various leaders within your communities. So while each section kind of builds on the previous one, we constructed both toolkits to where you can kind of just pull out, again, any section you want that fits your immediate needs. So those are the couple toolkits. And then we have also, like I said, the progress report for CYBHI. And so I'm really hoping that people can utilize these and spread the word to your communities and even for yourselves and your organizations to use as well. And yeah, I'm totally open to answer any questions too.